Because every time I read about you in the New York Times or anywhere else, they say you are a neo-reactionary blogger. But I thought perhaps I should just say, how do you see yourself? How would you like to be described?
I think I could do a little better than that. I think of myself as America's premier monarchist blogger. By monarchist, of course, I don't mean that I'm into this costume monarchy, crown Kardashian thing. I mean a real monarch. I mean less Elizabeth II and more Elizabeth I, or even Henry VII.
Yeah, well, you've even described Queen Elizabeth II as a Kardashian, but a classy Kardashian.
A classy Kardashian. Yes. Oh, yeah. Let no one question that the Queen has class. But she's no Henry VII, that's for sure. And one wonders what Henry VII would make of Britain today.
But do you recall from the idea of being a blogger?
Yes, blogger is fair. It's almost old-fashioned now to be a blogger, like it was definitely a thing 15 years ago. That was actually the late days of the blogs. And now it's just, I write on Substack. You can find me on graymirror.substack.com. That's gray with an A, the American way.
Like all the best grays. Yeah.
Like all the best grays.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, I thought you were actually killed in Baltimore like a while ago.
I had that a lot.
You seem to...
People on Twitter used to go R.I.P. every time
I would stay out of that city just in case.
Well, I once went to an alt-right party, and you'll know about these things, and some guy said, hi, you're Freddie Gray. And he went, oh, cool, I'm Michael Brown. I eventually clocked that this was an unacceptable joke that should not be repeated on a podcast.
Not acceptable.
So, Curtis, you've just arrived in England, so I feel a bit unfair asking you of your sort of impressions.
Oh my gosh! Well, my impressions of the place is that I'm staying in a pod hotel in Piccadilly, and it seems overrun with tourists. But I've seen also, what have I seen of the old country? I flew into Gatwick, and I took the train from Gatwick, and my feeling upon arriving in East Croydon was that, wow, the Bauhaus really did a number on this country. And, worse than the Blitz, they say. Really worse than the Blitz.
Yes. Yeah.
And, it's, of course, beautiful to see. You come here and you feel that, yes, it is, Athens to our Rome, but you also feel that there's some remaining ways in which London is still the mistress of the world, and it's beautiful to see that in a way.
Used by everyone, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Indeed, certainly by the Russians. Yeah. And, the playground of, but yeah, it's like when I talk about Europe, I often refer to the conditions of Greece under the Roman Empire because, you sort of know all this Greek history from the golden age of Aristotle and Plato and Thucydides and you sort of forget that this is a very short period in Greek history, sort of the last kind of dying flower of Athens. And Athens, it doesn't die, it lives. But, of course, they lose the war to Sparta, they have some issues, and then finally, is it Philip II who settles Athens' hash, or is it Alexander? Maybe it's Philip. The Macedonians kind of settle their hash. But, the greatness of that period, really this kind of axial age is long remembered. And then the condition of Greece under the Roman Empire is, I think, really interesting and has a lot to say for us today, because the condition of Greece under the Roman Empire, the condition of the Roman Empire, especially in its younger days, is just an agglomeration of former city-states, so free cities. To be a city under the Roman Empire, you govern yourself, basically. Later, under what some historians call the dominate rather than the principate, that changes a little bit, and central power and central bureaucracy start becoming more and more of a problem. But basically, to be a Greek city-state under the Roman Empire meant that you had no foreign policy and no military, and otherwise things were basically the same. And if you were Athens under the Roman Empire, it was even more special, because what Athens became under the Roman Empire was essentially a theme park. it became Athens land. It was still like the best schools of rhetoric were in Athens. And if you're a Roman aristocrat, you send your son to Athens to learn rhetoric. And Plato's Academy still operates until like the 4th or 5th century AD.
Yeah.
Right. Eventually it's the Christians who shut it down. But it's like still, everything is still a going concern. And what's fascinating, and this kind of echoes, The Third Man, the movie The Third Man.
Yes, yeah.
And there's this famous line in The Third Man about Switzerland that you might remember, where he's basically like comparing Switzerland. It's kind of ahistorical. He's like, in medieval Italy, they had wars all the time. They were constantly fighting each other. And they had, Raphael and Michelangelo, and they created all of these things. And he's like, this is Orson Welles as Harry Lime, and he's like, in Switzerland, they had 500 years of peace, and what did you get? The cuckoo clock. Now, the Swiss were somewhat violent at various times, right? But, this line was apparently completely ad-libbed by Orson Welles. It was not even in the script. And yet, Welles really had something going on there. There was really something that he understood. And when you look at Greece under the Roman Empire and Athens under the Roman Empire, and Athens and Sparta both actually are in this condition, you would expect basically that they've been like freed from war. All they have to do is like be at peace and like just live their nice peaceful lives. And strangely, those nice peaceful lives do not produce anything like the plays and poems and the philosophy of Athens when Athens was a sovereign country that lived by its own sword. And so there's this effect of like when you lose sovereignty, you become like spayed in a sense. There's something that you lose, and it's just this destruction of vitality. And so you have the sense in which Athens still exists in like 400 AD. Nobody has sacked it yet. The Visigoths haven't yet become a problem. And yet it's just a totally forgettable place. And so when I think of Europe in the American Empire, I very much think of Greece under the Roman Empire, where the Romans sort of understood perfectly well. They respected the amazing achievements of the Greeks in like creating civilization. They understood that the Greeks were the masters of rhetoric and so forth. And they would, send their kids there to learn rhetoric. But the place is like dead in a sense. There's a deadness that is basically not present in any nation that has lost its sovereignty. And there's certainly no question that Europe lost its sovereignty in 1945.